The automatic doors of St. Mary's Hospital burst open with a violent crash. 2 paramedics rushed through, pushing a gurney at full speed. Water dripped from the stretcher, leaving a trail across the white tile floor. On the gurney lay a middle-aged man, his lips blue, his skin pale as snow. His chest was still. Too still. Drowning victim. No pulse for 12 minutes, the lead paramedic shouted as they raced toward the emergency room. Nurses scattered like birds, grabbing equipment and clearing space. The overhead lights flickered as the trauma team assembled. Senior doctors in crisp white coats surrounded the gurney, their faces stern and focused. The smell of antiseptic mixed with lake water filled the air. This was life and death. This was chaos. Among the crowd of medical staff stood Dr. Emma Collins. She was young, perhaps 30 years old, with sharp eyes and steady hands. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore the same white coat as the others, but hers seemed less important somehow. Less respected. She stood near the back, watching carefully, her mind already analyzing every detail. Dr. Richard Morrison, the head of emergency medicine, took control. He was 60 years old with silver hair and a voice that commanded obedience. He had seen everything in his 35-year career. Or so he believed. Start CPR. Get the defibrillator ready. Dr. Morrison barked orders like a general on a battlefield. 2 nurses began chest compressions. The sound of ribs flexing filled the room. Another nurse squeezed an oxygen bag, forcing air into lungs that would not accept it. The heart monitor showed a flat green line. No rhythm. No hope. How long was he under? Dr. Morrison asked. Witnesses say at least 8 minutes before we arrived, the paramedic replied. We've been doing CPR for 12 more. 20 minutes total without oxygen. A heavy silence fell over the room. 20 minutes. Everyone knew what that meant. Brain death. Even if they restarted his heart, the man would likely be a vegetable. His brain had been without oxygen for far too long. Dr. Emma stepped forward slightly, her eyes fixed on the patient's neck. Something was wrong. Something the others had not seen. Dr. Morrison, she said quietly, I think we should check. Not now, Collins, he interrupted without looking at her. We're busy here. Step back. The other doctors exchanged glances. A few smirked. Emma Collins. The young woman who had graduated top of her class but still had not earned her place in their eyes. She was smart, yes, but this was the real world. This was not a classroom. Charge to 200, Dr. Morrison ordered. The defibrillator whined as it charged. A nurse placed the paddles on the man's bare chest. Clear. The man's body jerked violently. Everyone watched the monitor. The green line remained flat. Again. Charge to 300. Clear. Another shock. Another failure. The line stayed flat. Emma moved closer, her heart pounding. She could see it now. She was certain. The man's neck was swollen on the right side. His trachea was shifted slightly to the left. These were signs the others had missed in their rush to follow protocol. Dr. Morrison, please, Emma said louder this time. Look at his neck. I believe he has. Dr. Collins. Morrison snapped, finally turning to face her. His eyes were cold and hard. I have been doing this since before you were born. If you cannot contribute something useful, leave the room. We do not have time for guesses from inexperienced residents. The word stung like a slap. Several nurses looked away, embarrassed for her. One of the younger male doctors shook his head and whispered something to his colleague. They both chuckled quietly. Emma felt her face flush, but she did not move. She knew what she saw. She knew she was right. Outside the trauma room, a woman pressed her face against the small window in the door. Her cheeks were wet with tears. She clutched a small boy's hand. The boy, maybe 7 years old, stood on his toes trying to see inside. "Is Daddy going to be okay?" the boy whispered. The woman could not answer. She just cried harder, her whole body shaking with fear. Inside the trauma room, time was running out. The medical team had been working for nearly 30 minutes. CPR continued, but everyone could feel the hopelessness settling over them like fog. Arms grew tired. Faces showed defeat. "Charge again," Dr. Morrison said, but his voice had lost its power. He sounded weary now. Resigned. Clear. The shock delivered. The body jumped. The monitor beeped once, twice, then went flat again. Dr. Morrison stepped back and looked at the clock on the wall. He removed his gloves slowly, deliberately. The sound of the latex snapping off his hands seemed louder than it should be. "Time of death," he began. "No?" Emma's voice cut through the room like a knife. Every head turned toward her. Dr. Morrison's face darkened with anger. "Excuse me," he said coldly. Emma stepped forward, her fear transformed into determination. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. "He has a tension pneumothorax," she said clearly. "Look at his neck. Look at the tracheal deviation. His right lung collapsed when he hit the water. Air is trapped in his chest cavity, crushing his heart and lungs. That's why nothing we're doing is working. We're not addressing the real problem." Dr. Morrison stared at her. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. Then one of the senior nurses, an older woman named Margaret who had worked in emergency medicine for 40 years, leaned closer to the patient. Her eyes widened. "Doctor," Margaret said quietly, "she might be right. Look at the neck vein distension. And the trachea, it is shifted." Dr. Morrison looked. Really looked this time. His face changed. The anger disappeared, replaced by something else. Recognition. And perhaps shame. But he still hesitated. "Even if you're right, it's been too long. He's not dead until we've tried everything," Emma said firmly. She looked Morrison directly in the eyes. "And we haven't tried this." The room held its breath. Outside, the wife collapsed against the door, her legs giving out beneath her. The little boy began to cry, calling for his daddy. Dr. Morrison made his decision. "Do it," he said, stepping aside. Emma's hands moved with absolute certainty. She grabbed a large bore needle from the crash cart. A nurse quickly cleaned the right side of the man's chest. Emma felt for the correct position, the second intercostal space, midclavicular line. She had practiced this 100 times on dummies. Never on a real patient. Never when it mattered this much. She pushed the needle through skin, through muscle, through the pleural space. The hiss was immediate. Air rushed out of the chest cavity under pressure, escaping through the needle. The sound was like a tire deflating. "Resume CPR," Emma commanded. The nurses obeyed instantly. Compressions began again. The oxygen bag squeezed. 1 breath. 2 breaths. Then it happened. A beep from the monitor. Then another. Then a rhythm. Irregular at first, but definitely a rhythm. "We have a pulse," Margaret shouted. "We have a pulse." The room erupted. Nurses grabbed equipment, adjusting 4 lines, checking vitals. The man's lips, so blue moments before, began to pink. His chest rose and fell on its own. Shallow, but breathing. Blood pressure rising, a nurse called out. Oxygen saturation climbing. Dr. Morrison stood frozen, watching Emma work. She was intubating the patient now, securing his airway with practiced hands. Her face showed complete focus. She moved like a surgeon, like a healer, like someone who had always belonged in this room. The doors burst open. The wife and son rushed in, escorted by a security guard who could not hold them back any longer. "He's alive," Emma said, turning to them with a gentle smile. "He's alive." The woman collapsed to her knees, sobbing. But this time, they were tears of joy. The little boy ran to his father's side, touching his hand carefully. Dr. Morrison approached Emma. The entire room watched. He extended his hand to her. "Dr. Collins," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved his life. I was wrong. I should have listened. I'm sorry." Emma shook his hand. "We all saved him," she said quietly. "Together." But everyone in that room knew the truth. The young doctor they had dismissed, the woman they had underestimated, had done what none of them could do. She had seen what they had missed. She had stood firm when they had given up. As they wheeled the patient to intensive care, the staff parted for Emma like she was royalty. Respect shone in every eye. She had earned her place. Not someday. Today.